Alrighty guys, welcome back to the next part in the intercooler install series of doing the 1-inch line upgrades. So last video went a lot longer than I intended. I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter hopefully, but the plan is we got to do a couple of things. Hopefully we can knock it out all in one video. And that is going to be doing the heat exchanger upgrade. We got to do the pump install for the CWA400, same one Department of Boost uses. And then we're going to go ahead and do the ice tank bucket or ice tank line upgrade as well. So let me show you what I have for that, and then we'll kind of get into it and see how this goes. All right, so as you can see, we got quite a few parts out on the table. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick rundown of the stuff. So this is the pump. It's a Pureberg pump. I got it off of Euro Parts for a lot cheaper than it is at a lot of the other places online here. So it's from Europe, took a while to get here, but it worked. And it came in at about 300 bucks, which is not too terrible. So big boy pump. This is kind of the next best in line instead of the EMP pump, which I've been having a hard time trying to find. So we'll be using that. Came with its own connector plug right here, which is nice. So we can have our own little harnesses and everything hooked up. For this application, using some thick wire. It's going to be 8-gauge wire that's going to run all the way to the front of the battery terminals. For that, we got a battery terminal right there. Our nice big hole saw for being able to put in, or a hole bit rather, for being able to put in all our lines and everything. These are what I'm using on the ice tank. So they're a flanged piece because I don't have the ability to weld the aluminum. And I really don't want to go into that for the ice tank. So we're going to go ahead and use some silicone, seal these guys, put some holes in here, and these will be flanged, basically sealed onto the actual ice tank itself. Should work out fine. Fuse for our 8-gauge wire with a nice big old honking fuse. Some additional connectors that we're going to need with their pins for the signal wires and everything. Some nice heat shield. This is some extra parts. We got some elbows right here. This is for the 1.5 inch is what this is factory. And then it's going to go down to our 1-inch line, so it's a bit of a 90 right here. We'll use it out of the ice tank, out of the back there. Extension tube is 1.5 off the ice tank to the feed pump. You want it as big as possible so the pump never cavitates. And yeah, I just picked up some MAP gas, a aluminum brazing rods. This is going to be a whole ordeal, so that's some trash from Durative. But yeah, so hopefully this should be most of what I need. And obviously the 1-inch line and some other stuff that hasn't shown up yet, but it will be here shortly. So I think I'm going to start by uninstalling the ice tank and dealing with this section because I have all this stuff in front of me. This is my GT500 right here. It's obviously pulled apart a little bit at the minute. So we got the JT5 intercooler installed last time. So we got to pull out all those 0.75 inch lines I have running to the rear. Take off the bumper. We got to get our intercooler out of there, take that off, do the 1-inch line upgrade to that as well. Let me show you the ice tank we're working with back here. So this is the ice tank that we installed probably about 2 years ago now. It's worked okay. Main reason I'm upgrading is it just doesn't keep up. It's good with ice, but it's not good enough for street use. And even with ice at the quarter mile, it starts to heat up to about the 130 IAT range, which is a little bit warm. And I'd rather keep those things as low as possible. So right now it's got a Rule 4700 pump in, I believe, or 3700 right there. So that's going to be coming out. I'm going to take the pump out, and then we're going to go ahead and put our flange there, our return flange a little bit lower than this, probably down here somewhere, and that should be it. Take off our wiring, probably, we'll see what we do with that. I don't know. Seal that up somehow, I guess. And yeah, that's about it. I'm going to reuse the stock wiring that I have here as my signal wire, but I'm going to redo some of the stuff up front so that it does not getting full straight up battery voltage. All it needs is a little bit off the stock intercooler plug, which is located all the way up in the front here. So the stock intercooler sits right behind the bumper here, as you guys will see in a little bit. The current stock harness is still here, but I snipped the ends and put on my own wire. So I got another harness plug just so that everything's plug and play. And we're gonna go ahead and do all that stuff. So we'll get rid of one of the relays here, and then I'm gonna be running my power wire off of the fuse box because that's where the alternator has its extra wire as well. And then between these two, big old honking alternator wire here and the battery wire, I think it should have the most amount of power. So it'll be coming off here, fuse connection, and running probably, I'm gonna follow probably this harness, running around, or we can just do straight off the battery right here is another option. And my reasoning for wanting to do that is then I can run it and follow all these mount points straight across the back of the motor engine bay and drop it down where everything else is gonna meet up. So a lot to do for sure. We're gonna go ahead and start working, I guess. So like I said, I'm gonna start with, I think, uninstalling my ice tank. So we gotta get the back of the car up, drain it, and then I put in these bolts all around here So we're gonna undo those and get this whole thing out of here. Well, we'll see. We may not need to take it out. I'm not entirely sure yet. If I can get a drill in here, it should be fine, but we shall see. So first thing though, I definitely got to drain it out, and yeah, probably on a salt to do all this. It'll make life easier. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I basically had to break off one side of the clips to get this thing out of here, and then they had it screwed into this bottom plate. Some small screws right there. So I had no clue how the heck you'd get that thing in and out, so that's kind of fun, I guess. So the cool thing is this part we can plug up. We can just put a little metal dowel in there, and we can put our cap back on. It'll plug up the wire holes, which makes life easy. It'll just cinch them down and make sure nothing gets out. And then in here, looking inside the tank, I'm gonna try and get off that pipe, and then I think we're gonna drill out the 1.5-inch hole, and hopefully we can be good to get the new pieces in there okay. All right, so got that off. Next up, I'm gonna go ahead and cut off this bung as close as I can before we drill. And don't judge me too hard. I totally forgot that I don't have any more grinding discs. So I'm gonna go ahead and use a hacksaw. It's gonna look stupid, but whatever. I don't think I can film that. We're just gonna get it chopped off, and then I'll come back and start drilling it out. So I'm gonna leave the inside bung. There is a tube that shoots at a 45 that way. I'm gonna leave that there, and we're gonna put a screen over it with a hose clamp or something. This way it prevents ice from getting sucked into the new pump when we get it started. So should do the trick. We just wanna make sure the ice stays in the ice tank and not getting sucked into the pump and cause issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop that thing off next. All right, so one down, not too shabby if I do say so myself. Got plenty of space for everything. Just got to clear out some of the gunk that leaked in there. And yeah, not too bad. I think it's a decent option if we don't have a welder, which I don't, and that'll work. Probably could have aluminum brazed it. I was hoping I would keep this. Actually, that's pretty clean still. It's just needs to get washed off nice and good. But yeah, I think that'll work out just fine. Our good 1.5-inch inlet for the pump, and then we just gotta do the same thing to this one. So let's go ahead and get that other one knocked out and put the tank back in. After we clean it out, of course, it's probably gross. All right, so went ahead and cleaned up our workspace a little bit, got a bunch of metal shavings up and everything, cleaned out the inside of the tank, and there we have it. So the inside, we just have our bar right there, or pull rather. I gotta go ahead and, looks like I missed a couple pieces. We gotta put something over that to make sure there's no ice that gets in. Put a plug in our little wire hole right there, and then we got our nice flange on. So what I end up doing, if you guys saw, good bit of silicone, threaded 8 holes in here, or 6 holes rather, and silicone red Loctite, all those. 4 on this one because it's so much smaller. Didn't think 6 was necessary, so silicone red Loctite on this as well, and it should be good enough. I mean, it's not really a pressurized tank by any means. This one's going to have anything, it'll be underwater. That's probably going to be mostly almost on top of water, but yeah, pretty nice. I'm not going to complain about that. I think it worked out well for not welding and should do the trick. So this is actually ready to go back in the car. That's all we needed to do to it for modification wise. And then inside the car, still waiting on our lines. Oop, we got some water that spilled out when I took it out that I gotta clean up real quick. So inside the car, all we're waiting on doing, I gotta go ahead and upsize both of these holes, and then we should be good for the 1-inch lines, and we'll be getting there. So one thing at a time. Previous owner did sound deadening in here. I don't really like, because I think it added a lot of weight, but it is what it is. So yeah, tank's done, and we'll go ahead and get this thing put in the car next. All right, so got the ice tank back installed, and went ahead and ran our grounding cables for the pump. So we got one big cable, just leftover red. I put some stuff over it so it looks black, so I don't get, no one gets confused in the future. And then we got our signal grounding cable, so that's gonna go off to the side temporarily. We'll plug those into the harness later. And then ice tank's back in the way it was. Everything's nice and sturdy. So what we got to do now is figure out our pump placement. So I have an idea of where I want this when I was doing some testing. So where I'm thinking should work, should be able to put it basically right here. My idea is kind of set it far back enough, probably right around there, so that our inlet and everything lines up, and then our exit lines up with our existing hole, something like that, and then we should be in business. So let me go ahead and get my little thing lined up and see if everything works. So basically we got to go ahead and put this on, and that'll shoot out the side of the car like so, and I think we'll be good. So I'm going to go ahead and make the holes the right size for at least the well, yeah, really for both of these. So it's going to go ahead and make that one bigger, and then this guy's going to go on here, get nice and crimped down, same deal. So I think we'll be good. So I'm going to go ahead and get that hole saw set up, and then I'll show you guys what we come up with. All right, so this is basically what I have in mind. So got our pump here, got this tube angled down. This way I can have clearance for the second hole. Then I have a second elbow that's going to be right here going that way, parallel with it. We have a short one that we're going to use, this guy right here. So that'll be just a quick little bloop bloop and go that way, and then these two pipes can run parallel out that way. So that one seems to be good. We got to go ahead and make this hole big enough for our 1-inch elbow that's going to go right here. And then we have one more 90, which is going to be on this guy for the return, and that's going to go like this, and that'll be our return line, which lines up right over here. So hindsight, I probably should have gone out that way for one of the lines, but at this point I already put holes in the car from last time, and I'm not doing this twice, meaning I'm not putting another hole in the car. So we're going to work with what we got, and poor foresight on my part, but it'll be all right. So that's pretty much that. All we got to do now, I got to mark my holes. I have some bolts that I'm going to go ahead and use to bolt this guy and this guy down, and that'll keep our pump nice and sturdy, and we'll be in good business. So the only thing that's a little bit well, not frustrating, but a tiny bit annoying, is I'm noticing that the plug is going to be right up where my trunk cover goes, so I may have to cut another hole just to have a little bit of clearance for the outlet. So it happens. It'd be a lot more convenient if this plug was like, I don't know, pointed that way or something, but it is what it is. So really can't complain too much. But underneath here we have our evap canister, so we're going to unbolt that so we can get access to our hardware, and then go ahead and plug everything in. So that's what's going to be next. Definitely coming along, definitely getting there, which is good. So one thing at a time, but we're on the right track. All right, so that's not too shabby. Actually looks fairly decent so far. So went ahead and got our 90 just stuck in place for now for the return. We got some extra sound deadening we'll peel away. And then these are the ground wires. So we have our thick ground for the main pump, and then our signal ground, which is gonna be right here. It doesn't need much, just a tiny wire will do. And that'll be that. So they're both grounded on the underside of that bolt. I ground away some of the paint last time just to make sure it's nice metal to metal contact. So it is plenty good. We'll use a wire wheel on the back side of that. So that's good. Yeah, what else? So this 90 is pointed down, and then I'll have it shoot forward. This one just goes around and goes that way. We got our pump right there. Alignment is what it is. Couldn't really get any closer. I'm pretty happy with that though. Everything should hold just fine. And then we have our other fitting right here, which is just prepped up, just waiting for the return. Once my 1-inch hose comes in, I'll go ahead and put a little clamp right here and run a piece straight across, and I think we'll be good. So all in all, pretty happy with it. I think the worst part of this whole trunk looking is the sound deadening. The rest of it's really not bad. So I'm pretty stoked, and just one thing at a time, like I've been saying. All right, so I went ahead and finished up the back of the car, as we can see here. Everything is pretty much nice and buttoned up. So yeah, really can't do anything else besides the wiring, and we'll knock that out with the tubes because we're gonna have to run it all from the front. So that brings us back around to the front of the car. The next task on my list of things to do is to upgrade the heat exchanger inlet and outlet. So I got a couple of different things to try out. Well, one thing to try out. So I got some aluminum brazing rods right here, and then a MAP gas torch, which is going to be a lot warmer. So we're going to go ahead and try our hand at aluminum brazing. So I'm a little bit sketched out about this, but hopefully it'll work. I was watching a ton of videos on how to do this, and it seems really straightforward. So it's basically like doing solder, which I've done quite a bit of. So I think we'll be all right. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off the front bumper. You guys have seen me take this off before, so to skip to the highlight, I'm going to go ahead and pull it off. It's 3 bolts on either side. The wheel's got to come off. The fender liner's got to come off. And that's going to have to come off anywhere for the new lines. And then 3 bolts on either side. 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here. The pan bolts along the bottom, and the whole thing comes off. So it should be fairly straightforward. And we're going to get that off, and then I'll pick up with you guys once we start taking the heat exchanger off. So that is the next plan, and these are the fittings that came with it. The J2 Fab kit comes with these 2 fittings right here. So hopefully it'll work out. So we're gonna make sure we drill a hole that's only the inlet size. We have enough material to bite onto, and then we'll just go around it with the gas, and we should be good. All right, so the bumper is off. It's located over there right now, and it wasn't too bad. There's 2 bolts on this side. I said 3 before. The inner one is just for the bracket itself, so leave that one. 4 along the bottom. This little guy right here, and then we got a couple more, 1 across, 2 on each of the top, 2 on that side, and the whole thing just slides right off. And then we have our bumper foam piece, impact, whatever you want to call it, support brace piece there, kind of softens it up a little bit. That goes here. That is just push pinned into these 4 holes, so you just pull the whole thing out relatively easily. So on the wiring side of things, this is my old wiring that I put in about 2 years ago now. And I have the AFCO fans running off of this. So basically what it is the trigger wire, when this relay gets power, when this factory harness, so the factory pump goes right here, gets power, it turns on both the fans and it's gonna turn on the pump in the rear. This obviously looks kind of shoddy. At the time I didn't have connectors, I didn't think about it, and I just kind of electrical taped it back together, and it was like, hey, it's fine. But we're gonna redo this and make it look a little bit nicer. So this harness back is gonna go away, and we're gonna extend the existing harness out here. So I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. We're gonna redo some of this stuff to clean it up a little bit, but for right now, the main thing that I wanted to pull out of here is gonna be the actual AFCO harness itself. So these go to the fans. We're gonna clip the zip ties, and then there's a guy right here that goes to the fan harness. So we're gonna unplug that one, and I'm gonna use 2 hands in a minute. But yeah, basically this heat exchanger has to come off. So the heat exchanger is mounted right here. There are 4 bolts on either side, and then the whole exchanger should come out. So we have our 3/4 inch hose that runs along the front here. We're gonna be getting rid of that one and going to a 1-inch fitting, and same deal everywhere else essentially. So it's gonna be a little bit tight, but the 1-inch is gonna come straight out, and we're gonna cut one of the 90s real short and have it snake right in front of the radiator, kind of matching this whole shape and everything. and we should be good. So that is the plan. Let me go ahead and pull this thing out. We got to go down to leaves and bugs in here. This is the other hose I was talking about. This is a factory hose. So I'm gonna get my bucket over here, take all this stuff off, drain it, and kind of keep on going. Looks like I might have to take this off too, which is a couple of things back there, just to kind of give us some more clearance, and it'll be good. So without further ado, let's keep going. All right, so here we have the AFCO dual fan, dual pass heat exchanger. So the dual fan is very evident. For those of you who don't know what a dual pass heat exchanger is, or triple pass in VMP's case, it means that the fluid is divided in half here. Notice the inlet and exit are on the same side. So the fluid gets passed along the bottom, and then it fills up this radiator core, and then it gets pressed back across the top and exits right here. So fairly straightforward design. One of the issues I think that a lot of the things get set up in the stock line configuration, the way it's run, is the inlet tube is the top one. So you have your pump, even a stock pump shoots it straight across to the top. What I think happens, and I don't see why it wouldn't, it doesn't really make sense, there's nowhere for air to go, is looking at it, basically the water is going to enter here. It's not very high pressure, and it's going to fall immediately to this line. This thing's going to get pushed across, you know, a trickle worth of water, pushed across. It'll then drop all the way to here, fill up as much as it needs to, and then push out of here. As soon as this meets its quota for water, essentially, which probably isn't going to be much more than here, this whole top half and this whole top half are going to basically be full of air. There's no way to get that out. There's nowhere for it to drain. The only way you can hope to get it out would be to pressurize enough pressure on this end that it starts shoving air against gravity down, shoves it across, and against gravity down this way. So that's primarily why I'm concerned about running the lines this way. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to go ahead and make sure we have our inlet on the bottom, and any future heat exchanger installs anybody does should have it this way. Inlet in the bottom so that I can push air out and fill up water all the way to the top of this line right here, and it'll fill up this whole core. All the air goes to the top, and then fill up this whole core, and we get pretty much, should get most of the air out. There's probably still going to be a little bit of air trapped along the top here, but it should be a lot more utilization of the core of the heat exchanger. So sorry for the bit of a ramble. Department of Boost sells a great kit. If you're looking for a heat exchanger, get the Super Single. I already have the AFCO dual fan, so I'm not upgrading heat exchangers. I'm gonna leave it alone. I think we'll be all right. It's a fairly thick heat exchanger with a good core. I think we should be fine. I don't foresee this being a problem. But if it is, you guys will be the first to know. And this is evidently my second time diving into the system. Might be my third time diving into heat exchanger. So who knows? But for right now, the plan is to go ahead and upgrade these fittings. So what we got to do is chop these things off. This won't fit over there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off these two fittings. And we're basically going to go ahead and aluminum braze the new ones on. So I'm going to chop this fitting down a little bit, probably to this first knuckle, because I want it to sit as low as possible. I'm concerned about clearance here, so we're going to have it sit as low as possible, or maybe even do it at an angle if I have space. That actually might be the better idea, so we can have our line shoot across the front of the radiator, because I do not want to have a clearance issue where it bounces right into the, not the radiator, but this is going to go straight into our AC condenser. So while I'm in here, I think I'm going to relocate the horns too. I think it's a stupid location and they look awful right in front of the grill. So we're going to probably move those out of the way and clean up all of this. I'm going to reroute the wiring to run either below or something, just so it's not like right in your face, because I'm not a huge fan of how this whole turned out. So got a couple of things to do. I'm going to go ahead and flip you guys to time lapse, and we'll go ahead and get cranking. All right, so that is hot as fuck, so we're not gonna touch that. But, I mean, it seems to be one at the radiator. The real question is if everything is waterproof. And looking around, I mean, I think we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and pressure test it after the fact. But everything seems to be okay. I think that worked. And this is kind of the, I guess, fruition of not having a welder, but it's not the prettiest. I think it'll work though. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip it on its end and do this other side now. All right, so this is actually my second attempt. First time I did not get the base material hot enough. So I stood it on a torch for a good solid 3 or 4 minutes, just letting everything heat up. And then I put a little dab off to the side here, waited until that melted against the aluminum. And I took my things, so what I did is I tapped them and they fell right off like it was no resistance. So the radiator itself didn't heat up enough. So this time, I mean, it looks pretty freaking solid. I think that's quite stuck on there. It is extremely hot. So I tried to use some of the plumbing solder, what you call it, pre-stuff. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. And I don't think it worked, so I cleaned it off again, used a wire brush, both of these, wire brushed the back sides, and then once the metal was hot enough, dropped it on top, and then waited till it melted and got both of them hot, and then just kind of drug the stick around some more until everything is good. Pardon my flip-flops, it is a massive heat wave, so it's super hot out. And if I get burned, I get burned. It is what it is. But there we have it. So that feels very solid to me. I think it's coming off. Never mind. See that? Okay. So we're having an issue. That ain't gonna work. Okay. I'm gonna have to keep working on this and figure out what I can do about that. Okay. Hopefully third time is the charm. Even more heat and more time, and now that thing looks to be a lot better bonded. You can see it's not bubbling up around the edges. It's all nice and thin. It's definitely stuck to the top piece. Hopefully it's stuck to the bottom one good enough, but I think it looks pretty good. I dropped a chunk over there. So I think we're on the right track. Man, I really hope this thing bonded, but it's still quite warm. And one of the big challenges of getting the radiator hot enough is, who would have thought a radiator disperses heat really well? So the heat goes into the fins just disperses it right back out. Yeah, so, oh boy, let me put on a glove real quick and test this thing. Let's do it live. All right, gonna break off. Nope, that is nice and strong. Hell yeah, all right. Yeah, freaking awesome. Okay, that's way better. This one probably could have been a little bit hotter, but I think it worked good enough for what we need, and that's it, not coming off. And you know, if it leaks, this isn't the terriblest thing to do, but hopefully it won't, and I think we're good. So, hell yeah, that actually came out quite nice. I let the thing cool way down before I put the fan back on. That's why I took it off, and then get that back in the car. All right, so what we have here is the heat exchanger. So while we're in the front end of the car, so first off, I cut one of my 90s so it fit with our contour, and then it should run nice and tight to the fans, which is exactly what I want. I can always rotate this a little bit if it needs to run on top, but we should have plenty of clearance between the front and here, which will be great. So that's all set up for the 1-inch hose to come in, and then this line's obviously set up for the 1-inch as well. We're gonna go right there. And I haven't decided if I'm gonna run it along this side of the car or if we're gonna run it this way. I don't know yet, but all I know is this bottom one's going to be the feed. It's kind of on the wrong side. The feed would be more convenient on that side, but it is what it is. So before we put this back in, I wanna clean up some of the wiring in here. So let me show you what I did last time, and then we'll kind of go from there. So this is the stock heat exchanger plug. You get this ground wire and you get a power wire, which is white and red. This orange cable was already here. This goes to the trigger for the fans, so that'll turn on your fans. There's a relay up in the fuse box over there. So we need this side. This is a fan plug, and this is a fan plug. This we don't need anymore. This is my, this is my stuff that I had set up for the old pump. So this big wire runs to the back right now is the power wire, And I'm gonna get rid of that one, and we're gonna use a thinner wire that's gonna come off of the stock plug. So what I gotta go ahead and do, we're gonna trim back some of this wire harness because it's too far at this point anyway, and it's not really convenient. So we're gonna trim off some of the wire harness here, the covering, and I'm gonna go ahead and get one of our nice new fancy plugs. We're gonna wire in both the fans and the power on one side of the plug and the ground, and then the other side is gonna be able to plug in, and we're gonna run a power and a ground all the way to the back of the car. So technically one of these grounds can go, actually we'll probably want to run one of these grounds straight to the grounding point there, and kind of break out the harness that way. We don't need to have this whole thing go all crazy, but we'll see what we decide on. Maybe we'll run both, I don't know yet. But yeah, so regardless, got to get this squared away and kind of set up to be nice and plug and play, so we don't have any weird craziness going on, because this looks kind of ugly, and it's just, I mean, it's okay, but it's kind of shoddy and I don't like it, so we're gonna clean it up. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish up that bit. We'll go ahead and finish up that at the end. So went ahead and finished up, kind of pulling the wire through, ran it back to the same place we had it before, so looks pretty nice. And then up front here, we have our two plugs. So this ground wire goes up to there, and these are both for the fan. So it's not a ton better, but at least it's wired in, and I think it looks a little bit better. So nothing too crazy, but I'm gonna go ahead and put the heat exchanger back in, and really that's all we can do until the 1-inch lines show up. So that's about it. So yep, there we have it. Let's go ahead and get that done. All right, so it has been a little bit of time. Nothing really crazy has changed. I basically just finished up the wiring, so I wanted to run you guys through it and kind of show you what's going on. So first and foremost, last thing he says, how am I doing is wiring up this front harness right here. So it is waterproof, so all the nice connectors on it. And then I kind of zip tied the harness together. So this is my wiring. This goes to the AFCO fans. And then this thin one is the factory heat exchanger wiring. So as you guys saw, wired this up the way I have it going. The ground wire comes off of here, goes back, grounds to the body along with the fan grounds. There's 3 grounds in here. I don't like them being up here, so I relocated them down behind this thing, ground up some metal just to make sure it's nice and good ground contact. Put them back there. I relocated another ground that was up here, back there as well. Just kind of clean it up a little bit. Keeps things looking a little nicer. So we have plenty of clearance for our hoses. That's the only thing I'm waiting on is the 1-inch lines. So the trigger wire is here. It's a single wire that runs up, around, comes down there, into the body of the car in that little mess, and then back out of the body from our switch and runs to the back of the tank. So before we get there, the second harness that runs along the back here is our main power wire. I decided to go from the battery terminal. My thought process is it is synced into the whole system, and I'd rather, I don't know, just I felt like the right thing to do. So this is our power wire. I went ahead and put our nice fused relay in there. Not fused relay, but our fuse. Got a 40 amp fuse. Should be set to go for 8 gauge. So 8 gauge wiring. I put a terminal end on it, and it is currently sitting underneath that factory cable. So sandwiched in between there, nice and good. Everything fits like it should. I zip tied it along the factory cable, and it breaks out right here. Follows this along the firewall, along the back of the car, and it's nice harness, or wire loom, I guess. Follows it along, comes through here, shoots down at the same spot, and goes right there. The trigger cable then joins in the same loom and runs underneath the car. I have it taped up following one of the brake lines all the way up back around here. And that brings us to the trunk area where it comes out. So I was doing a little fiddling around because I had to elevate that piece on top of here anyway. It does clear the harness as it sits, which is awesome. Just everything I ever wanted. Come on, there we go. So this is our plug, and as you can see, there we have it. So there's an 8 gauge and a thin ground wire from the trigger that run over the tank here, and the underside of this bolt's also cleared off to make sure it has nice contact with the body. And then I ran the cable underneath. The other one shoots out under here, the same place our last one did, through a factory grommet, comes out the bottom. So yeah, everything's all nice and loomed up, looks nice and clean. Nice plug, nothing crazy, and that should be our pump. So pretty simple. I'm very happy with how clean this is. Like I said earlier, probably the dirtiest part of this whole thing is the OG wiring back here and some other stuff. So maybe we'll clean that up too if we get bored. But for right now, there we have it. So the ice tank's in here all cleaned out. Nothing crazy. I ordered a screen for in here, so I'll get that on whenever that shows up. Just to keep ice from going into the pump. And other than that, we're good. So really the only thing I'm waiting on is the 1-inch hose to show up, and we can finish plumbing out the system. So return, feed, and that's about that. Other than that, I really haven't done anything. Spent a lot of time wiring yesterday. I'm really happy with how clean everything is coming together. That was the goal. I'm gonna make sure that this thing is as good or better than OEM when I'm done with it. And that's kind of the point. So the other thing, and my reasoning for going to this pump instead of sticking with the rule and just doing the line upgrade, I don't think the rule is really, I mean, it's okay. It's a bilge pump, but like from a reliability perspective, I'd rather have something in there that was factory to a car, and the pump that's in there right now is a factory water pump to a BMW. So take that as with a grain of salt. BMWs are what they are, but for at least 100,000 miles should be all right, right, in theory. So the point being that it has some OEM quality in there for a factory pump that's not going to potentially crap out on me if I do road trips or whatever with this car in the future, running the ice tank and everything. I think we should be good. So do I see that happening, doing road trips in this thing? No clue, maybe, I don't know. But as things sits, I'm pretty happy with how it all is turning out. So really all I'm waiting on, I do wish I'd cleaned that up a little bit more. I left it kind of grody because originally the line was going to cover it, and now it doesn't look amazing, but it is what it is. The only thing I'm waiting on now, like I said, the 1-inch line. So the routing plan, we'll have it come from the tank, come around, gonna do a little U shape into this fitting, either in the front or right behind here. Well, it's gonna fit like that. So we'll probably come from the front side and just go a little U shape into this guy. It'll exit, shoot around this way, we'll have a 90. That'll send it here, another 90 right here to that guy, and then back out through there into the back of the car. It should be pretty straightforward without too many issues. Minimal chance of having air pockets because of how everything's going bottom up when it comes to priming and running the system. I think we'll be in good shape. So really all we're waiting on is 1-inch line to show up. All right, so I realized that I do have most of the parts to go ahead and put stuff back together. So minus the 1-inch lines, of course. So everything else I went ahead and put back on. So the power steering pump's on, coolant's back on, bled. So it does have a self-bleeding system. I took my vacuum pump, which you guys may have seen me do in other videos, who knows, and sucked from here, plugged up the bleeder tube, and went ahead and sucked it out that way, topped it off, and then I decided to put a little bit of pressure to the tank, blocking off this tube here, but letting this one go into an overflow tank, and that way it would push coolant down through the tubes, get everything up to this highest point right here, which is where this tube is, and let a little bit bleed out, let go, topped it off once again. So I'm pretty confident it's topped off. There are no leaks, it held vacuum just fine, so I think we're good to go. I do want to show you guys the routing I have. So I have a small extension down here, which hopefully you can see right there. So this is a push lock fitting, small extension, and then we have our tube running right here. So looks like we should be in good shape. Runs right behind the power steering pump. The power steering little bracket there kind of also holds this in place out of the way. Plenty of belt clearance, and it comes out right there. So that's going to shoot around between this little gap right here. We're going to run our line basically between these two, come out right here, and then it'll go around to there. And this top one, I was going to try and shoot it down this way and kind of snake it down that way, but I realized it'll be just easier to shoot it out front. So also clears, no chance of it hitting the belt. It's solid, and then we're probably, if anything, it's going to get pulled away a little bit when I put a little tension on it to shoot the other line this way and down there like our last routing went. So we should be good. All I'm waiting on is the actual 1-inch line itself to show up, and we'll be all set to go ahead and test this thing out. Yeah, that's really about it. So I'm going to set the battery back in place, like the last little couple things. I can probably even put the air intake back on. I'm going to do that all that off camera, and then just waiting on our tube for the bumper. Our alternator still has to come back, and we're good. All right, so it has been probably about 3 or 4 days since we last had a clip. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through everything that's happened. The main holdup is I wasn't planning on doing all the 1-inch stuff all at once, so I had to go order a bunch of stuff, and it's taken forever to get together, which is the delay on this video. So let's go ahead and go over everything. I got quite a bit done. All right, so you can see first off, right up, we got this hose line done. So a couple of things that I did, kind of dumb, but super simple. Took off the horns from here because I didn't like how it was kind of, you know, blocking airflow. It looks dumb. I didn't like it there. And I put them right in here. So they are bolted in to the fender well right there and out of the way, making sure they're pointed down. The harness is plenty strong to reach stock, so we're good there. I relocated some grounds for the fans to go behind this plate instead of being up here, kind of taking up space. I didn't like it right there. So that's done. And then our 1-inch line came in. Let me tell you guys, this stuff is huge. I was not expecting, like I knew it was gonna be a big deal, but I wasn't expecting it. So first up in the engine bay, so we have our line right here. Can't move and hit the belt by accident. And then went ahead and had it runs on top, the other one runs on bottom. So there's a small extension of 1-inch line. Our metal, these guys, something else I also changed. I was gonna run the plastic ones, but one, they're quite a bit smaller opening wise. So I didn't like that. And then 2, I looked up the ABS rating on this after someone pointed it out, and I was like, oh crap, you're right. So it's only good about 140 degrees. And in the event that it's going to be an engine bay, it's probably going to see higher temperatures than that we don't want to crack. So everything's going to be metal. I have 2 new elbows to install. We'll get that in a minute. But yeah, so bottom line runs right here. Hopefully you can see it behind there. Can't move. It is pinned by the power steering line, and it's not going to be able to hit the pulley and have any issues. So it's nice and tight. Same there, plenty of clearance. No issues there. And we're good. So assuming this doesn't leak and I have to take this all apart again, we should be okay on this department. So let's go ahead and go to the back of the car. Got a lot of rerouting to do that I knew it was going to have to happen, but I was kind of hoping I could avoid it. So right now we have our pump. I finished up the wire harness. I don't know if I showed you guys or not, but we have our pump feed, which runs into here. I did get the screen, which I'll install in there in a bit for the inlet, so we don't have any ice that goes in there. And we have our outlet, so 1.5-inch out that immediately necks and it goes up. This one goes down just a little bit, so we clear here. 1-inch for the rest of the system is just the fittings on here are 1.5, so that's why they're 1.5. So that's mounted up. Everything looks nice and clean. Our wiring's run. We're good. Underneath the car, I wound up splitting the wires, or splitting this rather. So this is how it was. This, the power cable that I had before. This is our next down to 1-inch for the outlet, and then 1-inch for the return. comes around, and here it splits off. You can kind of see, hopefully. So it's nice and on top of the exhaust hanger. It's also zip tied together. And then this is where it kind of improves over the last system. So we have it zip tied here. It follows the fuel fill neck. This thing doesn't go anywhere, and then it keeps it a good amount of space from the exhaust pipes, and we're good there. So this is the return line, and it runs up and over nice and high, so it shouldn't have any issues hitting an axle or anything. And the axle is compressed, so I know we have plenty of clearance. Follows the fuel filler all the way down to the fill neck here, where it splits off. We have a couple of little holes in here that are zip tied and nice and tight, kind of following the brake line too. It's good, something to hold on to, and it doesn't weigh much. I just want it moving. And then it runs down, and before we had our 2 lines running this way, now we just have the 1 clearly, and then it runs down. So it's nice and snug up in here. I bent and adjusted this shield to make it clear so it went down far enough. It doesn't look bad at all. It just moved it down a little bit so we have plenty of room. That plastic piece up there is probably the worst part of the whole system looking, and it kind of looked like that before, but it is what it is. So I cut some clearance stuff there so the pipe can run along it, and it's all zip tied to the brake lines that are hard, and they're zip tied, or not tied, they're bolted to the car, so we shouldn't have any issues, and it runs all the way down. So not the most amazing, cleanest job ever, but it is better than before, believe it or not, and I think it looks fairly good. So that's the 1 inch for the return line. And let's go ahead, the feed line runs on this side. So it splits off right there, coming on top, splits off, comes across the top of here, plenty of exhaust clearance, no chance of it having any issues. Runs over top of the axle, follows it up around the axle, up that way, kind of zip tied to whatever is available, and it's not coming out, so hopefully zip ties aren't going to bite me in the butt, but it'll be all right. Follows this brake line on this side down a little bit, 2 zip ties here to do that. Follows the same deal on this side of the fuel line, and then went ahead and bent this bracket down to provide clearance and hold the pipe up, and then I'll show you what I did on that side to keep everything up. All right, so over here, they have actual ties that I could not remember what the heck they're called, and I didn't buy any, but this works. So hose clamps to kind of help support everything and keep it nice. So I have 2 bolts. You can kind of see one on the opposite side over there for this transmission drive shaft safety loop, and it bolts through the frame here. So I took one of the bolts and I took my hose clamp, put a hole in the center of it, and then bolted the hose clamp between the bolt and this, so it's sandwiched and stuck there. Collapsed the clamp around the hose, and now it's nice and stuck. No chances of it bogging down beneath the car and having problems. This one, I drilled and tapped a bolt that went in here. Same deal to hold this hose clamp steady, and if it does wind up breaking, they have actual no shit wire ties that are a little loop that are rubber and will also do it. This is what I had on hand, so I want to go this route. Not the best, but it should be fine. If you're running your car, in the open element slot in the rain and salt and all that crap, I wouldn't trust it, but mine's garage kept and should be fine. So let's go ahead and keep going forward. Same deal on the other side. You can see the line kind of beneath the shield there as it runs up. I trim my shield on that side. This side doesn't have a shield, so follow it up here. And it comes out right through here. There's a nice little hole that's already in the body that's zip tied there. 2 zip ties to the frame rail. 2 zip tie around this tow hook, I believe is what that's for. Not entirely sure. And then zip tied along the AC line. And this is where we're gonna have our elbow that'll feed it into, feed it right there. So that's our feed. We wanted to go, like I said before, feed into the bottom, fill up the entire intercooler. It's dual pass, so it's gonna, or the heat exchanger, so it'll fill up this side, push all the air up to the top, fill up this side, push all the air up even with this line. Exit, I gotta put a 90, it's gonna be a little bit more tucked away. A 90 right in here, and then it's gonna run into the bottom of our heat exchanger. It'll then run about up to the top and out through this side, kind of behind all our shielding and everything, following the same path, and it returns. So 1 inch lines are no joke. They're huge, and it takes quite a bit of work to get everything to clearance properly, but I think we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish putting on the elbows, and then it should be time to reassemble everything. We're almost there, and test it and make sure that or water doesn't come spewing out of any of the fittings that we did. That would be unfortunate. So you go ahead and get this done. All right, so that's that, and it's officially closed system. So I went ahead and picked up these screens. If you need a part number or name, this is what they are right here. 1.5-inch black open screen aluminum louvers. So who knows? Hopefully it should work the trick. That should do the trick. Anyway, this is our 1.5-inch pipe. I'm going to go ahead and just insert one of these in like so, and then we're going to trim this down. So I'm going to pull it back out for now, but we'll trim it down, put a clamp around it, and then install this pipe inside of the tank, and that should keep any ice or any other weird issues from happening and getting in here and causing problems. So that's the plan. All right, about to go ahead and turn this on for the first time. Let's hope nothing crazy happens. No dice. Interesting. Well, shit. So we did get it running temporarily and found that definitely got a leak at the intercooler. That is not ideal. So we'll say on the back side here, it took me a while to figure out the wiring on this thing. Apparently it does not need a ground on this side, which is interesting. But if we get a good connection in here. So evidently that's in some kind of standby mode. Pump's definitely still running, but we don't want it running, so I gotta figure this out. Well, if you do it first, you don't succeed, try again about 30 times, but finally got it. So I'm taking the whole thing off, ground it down smooth again, and looks like we finally got it in. I water tested it just a little while ago with the hose, putting pressure to one side, no leaks. Same with this side, air tested, no leaks. So I think we're good. That was a bit of a panic though, because that was not expected. So let's go ahead and put this back on. All right, so we got front end back together. I don't remember what the last clip I showed was, but basically it took a bunch of work to get that stupid brazing material to actually seal properly, leak free. Put a bunch more on there and it finally worked. Got an angry horsefly up there that's dying. But yeah, so clearance wise, what I wanted to show you was got the belts down there. You can kind of see everything's behind the power steering pulley. And that shiny one back there is our 1-inch line. See the one on the bottom, one on the top. Plenty of clearance right there. Plenty of clearance behind the pulley. And yeah, we're good, guys. So I went ahead and ran everything, and looks like we're in good shape. So I got to put the fender liners back on. Oil came in, so I can do an oil change real quick. And then other than that, she's good. I tested everything. Battery's hooked up. I mean, I haven't got a start yet, but everything else seems to be in pretty good shape. So coming out of the back of the car, what I was having issues with was trying to get the freaking pump to work. So Forced Induction Interchillers has a site that says, or has this pump for sale as well. And they give you wiring instructions, which don't totally match the new pump, but in essence, so what I originally had was power going to the pump, just straight from the battery, and I wanted to use the signal wire to turn the pump on and off. It didn't work. What happened instead was it would signal it on, and then it would go into standby mode and just run slow speed for a while. Some people say it had a timer on it. I timed for full 5 minutes and never turned off, so I was like, okay, that's not happening. So right now this is kind of boogered, but basically the wiring goes car battery to relay, switch from the cabin slash the plug-in switch at the front of the car that is the factory pump where it gets power to the signal on the relay, and then ground from the relay to the ground body. The big ground also goes to the body. And then right here, these two pins get jumped together and those two get jumped together, and it works. So the reason it's not on right now is I need to get a new, I've already ordered a new harness right there. So we're gonna go and get a new harness to come in, plug. I boogered that one up pretty bad. I have a new relay coming that has the proper 8-gauge wire. So this way we're not doing any kind of weird neck downs. And I think the harness that's going to come is going to have thinner wire, so we're going to go ahead and just go to that. The purpose of the 8-gauge is so that the current never heats it up as it's running way upstream. It's 25 feet roughly, is a pretty long distance to run this cable, and you need a lot of wire to make sure it's good. So that's pretty much that, guys. We're going to have to drain and flush this out a couple times. There's just some crap and debris in there, but from all our cutting and everything we did, but it is working out. So all in all, it appears to be working fairly well, and all I got to do is get my wiring finished up, and we'll go ahead and call it a day. So it's been a very long, very arduous process. This is by no means a plug and play. I'd almost argue this is more difficult than the cams in terms of frustration. At least the cams are made for the car. All this stuff is kind of like, the car was never designed to have 1-inch lines, so it's kind of like just making it work. But yeah, these things, I mean, they're no kidding. They're beefy. This is a beefy line. But clearance wise, like I said, we're good. It's close, but it can't move and hit the pulley, so I think we're in good shape. And there we have it. So I'm gonna do my oil change, get the fender liners back on, and then I'll finish this video up with the wiring and hopefully a first start. Alrighty guys, so the oil is changed. Car's back down on the ground. Both wheels are on, tightened up. Everything's buttoned up on the front end. Battery's disconnected because all I got to do is finish up the wiring on the rear, and I'm waiting for a relay to come in. So I hope I showed you guys yesterday, but I had a fairly the old relay in here and had a whole bunch of crazy wiring going on, so I cleaned it up a bunch. It's looking a lot cleaner. So this is our signal wire from the cabin switch and the factory on this side, and our 8-gauge power wire from the battery on this side. This is going to go into one side of the relay. And then over here we have a ground on this side, which doubles into this ground and goes to the car. That'll be for the relay ground. And then our power and signal wire to the pump both get power at the same time. That's on the power side, so that'll also go to the relay. So as soon as the heavy duty relay comes in, we should be good. I did order a second, I want to be reusing this same plug. I ordered a second one, and it shipped with like 14-gauge wire, which, going through all the effort of making this 8-gauge and nice and thick to keep everything happy and cool. When I was running it, the 12-gauge wire was starting to get kind of warm. Just testing it yesterday, so I decided we're going to stick with the thick stuff and just keep everything happy. But yeah, I mean, we're so freaking close. So really the only big thing to make sure is that reusing my intake gaskets didn't screw me over, and when we fire this thing up, it doesn't spray coolant everywhere. But other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape. Everything's back together, no weird leaks, everything else is cleaned up. So we should be about there. I just gotta wait for this relay to come in, and then I think we are basically done. So hopefully tomorrow I can get that wired in, we can start it up and test it. I'm not gonna do any pulls or anything, but at least drive it around and make sure everything's good to go. Well guys, it's finally done. I just tested the system with it on. I'm gonna start the car up in a minute, and I guess we'll go ahead and make sure everything works, but freaking nuts. So let me go ahead and show you what I wound up doing back here. Left the light back here so I can see in the trunk easier. But wiring wise, what I wound up doing. So I didn't know the signal wire comes off of the factory plug and runs into the car, which makes sense. And then the signal wire runs in the car for a switch. From the switch, it comes back here and runs to the relay. So I got a heavy duty relay with rated for 80 amps, which is the way more than it needs to be, but I want to make sure we're all good. I was mainly looking for the wire gauge to make sure it was the same. I think it might be a 10 gauge, but it's still pretty damn thick, and it's plenty. So the whole reason for having the more gauge in there, thicker wire, is over distance, electricity creates, or wire, copper creates resistance. You want to make sure we have no weird issues, so I went overkill with the 8-gauge wire to run everything. So power and our signal come in this one. This runs through the body of the car. And then I got these sweet, super thick terminal lug connectors, so they are perfectly capable of taking the 8-gauge wire, soldered in the terminals with each of the wires, and then you can remove the actual pins if needed, but they're thick. So we're good there. Runs into the relay right there, which I mount right between my two booster pumps, and then from the relay it goes to here, and then we have our signal wire labeled on this side. Sorry, signals labeled here. On this side, the white signal and red power both go to the single power side, so they get power at the same side, and then the ground for the relay I just ran to the other side, which loops up with the ground over here, and everything follows the grounds to the body of the car right here. And it seems to be working as intended, which is awesome. I kind of want to clean up this booster pump wiring. That's from the, like I said, previous doesn't look the greatest, but other than that, I mean, we're in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and zip tie this guy probably up here, or just kind of out of the way, because I don't want the wires laying on the ground in the event there's a leak or something. If this area gets water in it, we don't want to have any shorts or anything weird happen. Yeah, so let's go ahead and start the car up. Oh, it's kind of nerve-wracking. See how it goes. It hasn't run since took everything. And of course, it is currently actively raining out, so we're just going to go ahead and start the car and kind of test things in the garage. Hopefully we don't die. Or anything. There's a little drips from yesterday back there in the back center, but that's fine. Oh man. Gonna go there. Seems to be alright. Idle's coming down. So I think that's about it really for now. Turn everything off and yeah, pretty crazy. I'm currently keeping an eye on is my IAT2. I am curious why it's slowly climbing. Unless there's an air pocket in there, it seems weird that it would be hotter than ambient air when the water is still very cold. So we will see about that one. That's interesting. Go for a drive. Alrighty, so we're gonna have to do some testing just to make sure everything is good still, but pretty sure that's about it for this video. So super long one. This install was a lot more in depth than I thought. I noticed my last posting was about 10 days ago, and that's because it's been about that long of just working on this thing pretty much every day, trying to get everything sorted out and getting it to work properly. So this project definitely sucked, but this is also the last major thing I wanted to do on the car. I mean, I would consider this thing fully bolted on at this point. Still a 93, but the boosting, timing, and everything, I'm not really worried about it. I don't see myself doing the 85 anytime soon or ever. But who knows, that may change in the future. But for right now, I think it's time to go ahead and button things up, do some test drives, and see how it does. So once again, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Let me know your thoughts down below, and take it easy.